off, and then we'll go in. We'll start with Kelsey after James.
Here it comes.
Okay, does anyone have any other announcements before we begin? Okay, great. James, take it away.
Sounds good. This will just take a minute. I just want to update everyone on the teacher reports from our kiddo. So let me just pull them up real quick. All right, so the two forms that we are getting back or got back from the teacher are the behavior assessment system for children, looking at those different areas of behavioral and emotional functioning. So on the mother's report for this measure, she didn't have anything in that clinical range, but the teacher noted several concerns about his behavior, which is kind of consistent with how she had reported things going. So mom doesn't think that too many things are a problem at home, but she gets all this feedback from teachers that things are really rough in school. It's kind of reflected here on this measure. So difficulties in the subclinical range on things like hyperactivity and aggression towards others. And then also some social withdrawal behaviors and some adaptive skills, specifically in his general flexibility with things and changes to routines and things like that. And also his social skills. And then clinically elevated scores are things with low mood or upset behaviors. And then also atypicality, which is kind of consistent with the diagnostic impressions that we talked about last time. These are a lot of those autism-like behaviors. And then if we look specifically at the autism symptoms, so the autism spectrum rating scale, again, this is another measure that mom had reported low concerns on, but again, we're getting lots of information back from the teacher that's consistent with that diagnostic impression. So the things that jump out here are the unusual behaviors in DSM composite scales. So these are behaviors that are consistent with that diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. And if you look at them more specifically, the things that jump out are difficulties with stereotypy. So those kind of repetitive or stereotyped interest or behaviors, behavioral rigidity, so inflexibility with changes to routines or doing things in a set certain way, and being really rigid with how he approaches things. And then also sensory difficulties, sensory concerns. And then lastly, attention and self-regulation skills, which is also consistent with our initial diagnosis of autism, or sorry, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So I don't want to take up too much time from the other presenters, but kind of overall, the pattern is that his teacher report ratings were consistent with those diagnostic impressions that we talked about last week.
All right, thank you, James. Next, we have Kelsey sharing her speech therapy report.
Yep. Hello, everybody. So this will be kind of short and sweet, but so our evaluation was actually exactly a month ago today. When he came to me, he was very pleasant, very cooperative, very engaged. He was not distracted at all during our evaluation. However, there were no distractions really in the room. His mom was there, but she sat behind him and he just paid attention to the book that was right in front of him that we were working with. He used complete sentences with me to comment, request, answer questions. His intonation was normal. His speech sounds were typical, meaning that I didn't notice any articulation disorders that I was concerned about. I administered the SELF-P3, which stands for the Clinical Evaluation of Language Fundamentals, the preschool version, and I'll go over that when I show you what his scores were, and then also the SRS, or Social Responsiveness Scale. So getting into the score breakdown, his sentence comprehension was average. As you see, most of his scores are within the average range. So sentence comprehension is essentially when I say, point to the thing that smells good, point to the thing that shows I can eat this. So like smells good, flour, I can eat this, an apple. And he did really well with that. For word structure, I do things like kind of finishing a sentence. So I'll say, for example, trying to get him to do the present progressive ing. I might say, this boy is walking, this boy is, and it's a picture of a boy sitting. And I want him to say sitting. He was in the mildly below average range for that section, but everything that he got wrong are things that we expect him to start learning in school. And he should pick up on those pretty quickly. His expressive vocabulary is asking him to name things like a carrot, a guitar, a singer. He was in the high average range for that. No concerns there. Following directions, that's pretty straightforward. Asking him to point to pictures out of a row or out of a group and in different orders, varying steps or complexity. And he was in the average range for that. Recalling sentences is when, I always call it the copycat game. I read a sentence, I ask him to repeat it back to me. And he was in the low average range for that, but I think some of that was maybe just zoning off on his own. There's also some of the things in the test are questions, and kids will get tripped up on that because, like, I'll ask, was the teacher followed by the children? And the child is supposed to repeat that sentence back, but some children answer the question instead. So that's very common for that subtest. And then for basic concepts, we're looking at being able to tell if something is inside or outside, which baby is not crying, things like that. And he was in the average range for that as well. And then these core language scores, just take everything and put it all together. So each core score is made up of the scores of different subtests. And as you can see, these all fell within the average range. Main thing to point out is that his receptive language, meaning his ability to understand others, is within the average range, and his expressive language, meaning his ability to express his thoughts, wants, needs, participate in class, things like that, also in the average range. And then his SRS, which is the caregiver report, social responsiveness scale. This specifically looks at signs and symptoms of autism and asks the parent to just make note of anything that they see within their child. And his mother reported him to be within normal limits, so no concerns there. Anyone have any questions?
All right, thank you, Kelsey. Next, we're gonna go on to our family advocate, Raisha Young.
All right. Okay, spring semester family discipline. I met with mom after the occupational therapy evaluation. The family trainee, me, I led the interview while family faculty, Molly, played with Cooper. I used questions from the interdisciplinary training team family interview as a guide. I asked mom, one of the questions was, what is one of your child's strengths? And I asked mom that, and she just kind of looked at me, and she said she had never thought about that before. And I told her I was the same way when someone asked me that the first time. I said, we're so used to going to therapy or going to appointments, we don't think about our kids' strengths. So we kind of brainstormed. And then she said Cooper was a smart kid who loves math.
Hey, Risha.
Yes, ma'am.
We are not seeing your gorgeous face, and I wonder if it looks like your camera's on, but I wonder if your thing is slid over your actual camera itself on your laptop, or maybe you're not able to do that right now.
Oh, I don't know. Can you see my screen or just not my face?
See your screen, we just can't see you.
Oh, okay. I don't know how to fix that.
Is the video playing at the bottom?
Yes, my screen is fine.
So look at the very top and see if you have a toggle over your camera.
Okay, let me go on. No.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to see your smiling face.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. Okay. This was a very challenging interview for me because mom was very vague. I asked a lot of open-ended questions and I received very short responses. Like I asked her about school and she told me that she just think Cooper and the teacher is not a good fit. And so then I asked her also, I said, well, what kind of behaviors are you seeing in school? You know, because I talk to y'all all the time about Grace's behavior. So I'm like, okay, let's talk about some behaviors. And the only thing she said was that he's very loud and he doesn't put up his toys. And she had already told me that the sister was autistic, but I didn't want to ask too much about the sister because this is about Cooper, not the sister, you know. But I was wondering if she's seeing anything, if maybe he's copying her behavior at home, but she was just so vague. You know, I keep asking her all these questions and I'm not getting a lot of responses out of her. I think mom expects an autism diagnosis because I think that's familiar to her. And I know the spectrum is very broad. Cooper did so much pretend play. I'm just like, I mean, he just played the whole time. He sat when he was supposed to sit, you know, he did a lot of pretend playing. And I was just like, are we really seeing autism here? You know, because he was just so engaged with his toys. He came over, looked at me for a while, talking to his mom. But mom seems to think once Cooper gets tubes in and his adenoids removed, that's supposed to happen, I think, the 16th of this month, everything will be okay. And she also said that Cooper and his sister gets along fine. They don't have any issues. But I did tell her, she was saying how the teacher says that when she comes to pick him up, how he was good, then they have a conference and she said he was bad. And I did tell her, like, you know, pick up and drop off is sometimes hectic. Maybe she feel like she can't tell you everything in that short amount of time. And she said, oh yeah, she can see that. But she think once the tubes go in and once he get a new teacher, most of the problems will be solved.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, great. We will next move on to Kelly for her occupational therapy assessment.
Great, thank you, Shannon. Kim, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just had a quick one. Risha, I know you mentioned that you were wondering if he was copying the behaviors from his sister. What made you kind of think about that? Like, did she kind of allude to the sister having some more problems? I just wanted to ask about that.
No, she didn't. She just kept saying behaviors, and I looked at behaviors. I'm like, hey, what's going on? But she couldn't give me nothing concrete. So I'm wondering if he's doing anything. Is he just copying what she does? But I didn't want to ask about the sister too much, because it's about Cooper, But no, she didn't give me anything concrete. That was just something I came up with.
I do know, I don't know if this has come up with any of the evaluations, and I unfortunately didn't write exactly what she said down, and I could go back to the video, but she did say that she was familiar, I believe, with speech therapy services because the sister had received it. She didn't elaborate on it more. It was either speech therapy or OT. So I don't know if anyone else had heard anything like that, or if that is just extra information and maybe not pertinent.
Yeah, Kim, it was speech therapy that she mentioned being familiar with.
she didn't really mention anything about it with me in particular. We were pretty honest with her that he did really well during our visit. Gave him a high five, gave him a prize, everything. So she didn't really have a whole lot of questions for us about speech.
All right, I will go ahead and get started if no one else has any other things. So I met with Cooper a few weeks ago. The two teams blur together, so I know he was a few weeks ago. And just to give an overview, I created an occupational profile and just got to know Cooper and his family. I will go through some clinical observations similar to what Kelsey said. He was super pleasant and enjoyable and motivated by snacks during our assessments. And then I will go through 2 parent report questionnaires as well as my formal assessment. And as noted, and seems to be very similar with everyone else, the behavior concerns, and Mom seemed to primarily say specifically at school, and I will go into more detail later, but she also noted the behavior started around age 3. And as Risha mentioned, picky eating was also a big concern. And I'm so sorry if you can hear my dog barking. I think the mailman is here. But anyway, so moving into activities of daily living, we have feeding. So Mom said picky eating. Cooper refuses to try new foods. And she kind of listed like he typically eats eggs, pancakes, PB&Js, and sausage, I think were like the 4 big ones. And then he only prefers water over milk or juice or anything else, which I think that is a good thing, but the picky eating can be extremely frustrating for families. For dressing, she noted that his eczema can impact sensitivity to fabrics and that he typically prefers to be barefoot when he's at home or outside, but he'll wear socks if he has to. So just some sensory things to note. And then when I asked Mom about like zipping or buttoning, she kind of was like, oh yeah, I think so, or I'm not sure off the top of my head. And then we had him button and unbutton, and he was able to after demonstration. But then when asked to complete it again without demonstration, it seemed like he forgot the motor plan. So just some little delays with dressing as well. And then for grooming and hygiene, Mom noted haircuts were probably the most challenging, which makes sense, especially around his ears and everything we know with his hearing going on. He's very sensitive. And Mom shared that she was a hairdresser, so she does them at home, which is really nice. And she can kind of talk him through it, have him look at the materials and make the sounds to kind of prep him before going and getting that haircut. There were no concerns with bathing, toileting, or mobility that Mother reported, but I'm sure my PT colleague will have some things to say about his mobility. And then education. So he did have some fine motor delay, not too pressing, but it was there. And then the behavior concerns that I feel like we're hearing from numerous providers. And then Mom said, like, when they're going to school, Cooper will say, my teacher's mad at me, and things like that. So it's just a little concerning to hear that he gets really upset about going to school. And it's, again, Mom has to kind of sit there and really talk him through the day and make sure that he's okay with going in. And then his play, sometimes he'll play to himself, but I will say, like, his pretend play was on board. He was playing with trains and dinosaurs in the evaluation. And Mom noted that he will throw fits when asked to clean up toys. And we did kind of see that in the OT evaluation. We asked him to clean up the train, and it was like, no, because we were going to go sit down and do a task. So we kind of helped him clean it up and eventually talked him through it, and he was able to help put away the train tracks. And then for his social participation, he occasionally joins and play with others without disrupting the ongoing activity. So sometimes he might specifically want to play his way, or he kind of becomes anxious about people breaking his toys. And so I think when like friends come over, they hide specific toys just so Cooper doesn't get anxious about his favorite toys. And then going into some of the behavior and emotional regulation, I feel like Risha really nailed it when she said Mom was vague, because I know Mom has these behavior concerns, but when I asked her about them, she goes, oh, he's like really easy redirectable at home, and he'll calm within 1 to 5 minutes, and it's usually over transitions and cleaning up toys. And I would say for him to be able to calm within 1 to 5 minutes isn't too concerning, but if they're seeing other behaviors at school, then it might be good to kind of talk with them a little bit more. I know James brought up some stuff at the beginning. And then I know I feel like I repeat myself every time with sensory processing, but just to review, all of our bodies take in sensory input in different ways, and some things feel good to others and horrible to other people. So you can be over or under responsive to touch, to sounds, to vision or visuals. So for Cooper, her mother's report, I'm gonna, sorry, move you guys. He scored in the typical range. As you can see here, the white is all typical where all the red dots fall, except for hearing, which I think again correlates with everything that we've been finding so far. His hearing, he's a little responsive or over responsive to auditory sounds, but his social participation, vision, touch, body awareness, his balance, planning and ideas, and just his overall total sensory system, I would say is in the typical range per the parent report. And then we also have another family or caregiver report, which is ages and stages. And this is just prompting us to see if we needed further observation or evaluations in certain domains. So as you can see here, communication, his gross motor and problem solving didn't trigger any red flags, but his fine motor and personal social would be recommended in the following, like to monitor. So just keeping those, again, correlates with what I found in my final assessment, which was the Peabody, which Kim will go and talk about the gross motor, but I did the fine motor section, and you can see here it has blocks, stringing beads, drawing a circle, square, cross, and being able to cut those out. So I had him sit at a table and do these activities. We did take breaks every few turns, just he seemed to be rushing through everything and wanting to get to the snack or wanting to get to the game, and was really motivated by that. And then here we have his fine motor section. So the first thing we noticed is he used a right-handed digital pronate grasp, which I have pictured here. And if you look, a lot of people have weird, funky grasp. I know I do, but it is considered an immature grasp pattern for his age. And like I said, he was able to unbutton 3 buttons within a certain time period, but required extra demonstration to complete the task. He was able to touch his finger to his thumb, so just that opposition of going back and forth within 8 seconds. And then he had appropriate like pincer grasp to pick up small items like beads and blocks and little pellets, which we use Cheerios. And then for his visual motor, he did a great job of imitating structures. So we had him build a wall and a bridge, a train, a pyramid, and I would build it, and then he could copy it. He was able to lace a string beads. He did a great job copying a circle and a cross, and he was able to snip with scissors, but when asked to like snip a circle or anything like that, he had some trouble with. And then he had difficulty with the square. I don't know if you can see it. I didn't upload it, but this was his square. Sorry, it's super hard to see, but he just didn't have his corners connected all the way. So just little things like that, looking at his fine motor and visual motors. And going in, I see I have a chat. Oh, cool. James said he noticed an unusual grasp during the psych testing as well. So then I think what gives you guys a great understanding is I think he was 53 or 54 months at the time of our exam, and he fell into for his grasping for 43 months and for the visual motor 40 months. So again, a little bit of a delay. And then his Z-score for fine motor was a negative 0.8. So just to give you the visual, he just fell right here where the star is on our chart. So here would be the average, and he was negative 0.8. So he was delayed with his fine motor skills. And I do think he would benefit from some OT, but it's not, I feel like, the most concerning thing. And with school starting and he would be more involved with school, I feel like he could easily catch up. So we did not recommend OT at the treatment session or at the evaluation, but after looking at everything, I would recommend once a week to every other week for maybe 12 to 16 visits and giving that home exercise program. And again, focusing on the fine motor, as well as maybe the picky eating and really hitting that hard, and behavior and social participation as well. Any questions? I feel like everyone is so quiet today. We were quiet in the last class too, that's why I'm saying it.
Kelly, can
Thank
I
you,
add
Kelly.
something that I just remember mom mentioning just related to behavior in school?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
know I remember her talking a little bit about the other kids in the class, and she had mentioned that half of the class are kids that have IEPs, and she did say that she felt like so much time was spent with some of the other kids. I think she said something like that. Am I thinking correctly to the right kid?
Yeah, and yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so much time was spent with the other kids. So she didn't feel like Cooper had a lot of time. So I don't know how much of the behavior problems she really feels are problems that Cooper's having versus just problems with the whole dynamic of the class and with the teachers. So just something to keep in mind.
Great, thank you, Kelly. And next we have Kim, and she's going to give her physical therapy assessment.
Sounds great. Let me just bring up my PowerPoint. Did everyone enjoy the nice warm weather over the weekend? It's like 70 degrees here. All right. Sorry, my thing's in the way. All right, can everyone see it okay? Cool. All right, so good afternoon, everybody. Today I will be discussing our ITT Team 2 evaluation for physical therapy. We actually completed this just last week, so fairly recently. So for the subjective interview, which is just the medical term for when we kind of discuss with the family what their concerns are and what kind of brings them into physical therapy, Cooper's mom actually reported that she really didn't have any concerns for physical therapy. She even like went to go about saying like, I'm sorry, I don't really have anything, but I guess that's a good thing. So that was encouraging going into it. And we also discussed that the issue of walking on his toes, since he was observed to toe walk in one of the previous ITT lens sessions. And she reported that he only toe walks on his, walks up on his toes less than 5% of the time. The picture to the right is a picture of someone who walks on their toes. They basically, almost like a ballerina, kind of just stay up on those tippy toes. And in physical therapy, we kind of want to watch that because it can lead to muscle tightness in the calf of the muscle, deformities within the foot, and having some pain as well. The mother did note that this kind of occurs more so with new situations. So sometimes kids do this when they get excited, and we kind of just talked through the potential issues and that she was going to continue to monitor it and bring it up to the PCP or PT if it came to be more of an issue. To continue on, we discussed his birth history. He was born at 36.5 weeks, so just about a half week early. And he was born via a C-section because his mother had low fluid levels and was on bed rest, but this did not result in needing to stay in the NICU. This birth history is really important because in physical therapy, we want to make sure that there wasn't any prematurity or injury to the brain or nervous system early on that could be causing something like cerebral palsy. For his development, his mother reported that he was on target without concerns and has not received any past therapies. Further on, when I asked about pain, The mother noted that he may have pain during the evaluation because he currently had an ear infection. Now, Cooper did not state during the evaluation if he had pain, but I thought that that was important to note since he does have kind of a lot of challenges with his ears. For play and leisure, I was super excited to find out that the family plays soccer once a week, every Friday as a family. So as a physical therapist, that makes me really excited that the whole family is doing something active together and promoting activity for their child. And he is planning to play t-ball in the spring. Further on, we talked through his home environment. He lives with his mother, father, and sister. They live in a one-story home with 5 steps to get in with a railing and bedroom and bathroom on the first floor. At this point, his mother did note that she did not have any issues with having him go up and down the stairs, and this wasn't a concern. It is important that we go through the home environment in physical therapy to see if they actually need to navigate stairs or not when they go home. He attends a preschool at John Foster's Duals Elementary School, and he isn't receiving school-based services. Jamie kind of brought this up previously, but part of his classroom do have an IEP, which is an individualized education program. It's the document that helps us provide specialized services in the school setting. So I think that this could be a positive if he does end up needing an IEP, that there are already students in the classroom who already receive those services, so the transition might be a little easier. So going off of my main assessment of the evaluation, I also completed the Peabody Developmental Motor Skills Second Edition. For easeability, I will just call it the Peabody. This is the same assessment that Kelly completed, except I focused on more of the gross motor sections of the item set. This gross motor section is assessed with children from birth to 6 years of age. And it's kind of a wide range of items in this booklet. And we base our starting point for the assessment on their age. And then we kind of modify our window of where we score them based on basal and ceiling scores. So basal score is where they receive 3 zeros in a row on these items that kind of they go from easy to hard in chronological order. And they have to get 3 2s in a row to get that base score. And then we keep going through items until we reach a ceiling where they have 3 zeros in a row to kind of show where they have kind of plateaued. 0 is, it's kind of changes by the number per item, but it means that they weren't able to complete that skill in the way we wanted to. For physical therapy, we look at 3 different subtests: the stationary, locomotion, and object manipulation, and these are combined to create a gross motor performance score. So now we're going to go a little bit in depth into what I saw during each of the subtests. For the stationary subtest, so the items where he isn't moving, he's is more focused on balance and staying still. He was able to maintain what I call tall kneeling. It is the picture of the boy with the blue shirt and orange shorts. It's where they kind of balance up on their knees. It takes a lot of core stability and leg strength. And in the test, they are actually not leaning on anything like this boy with him leaning on the drawing on the wall. And it took multiple attempts for him, which suggests some poor core stability and postural control. He was also able to balance on 1 foot for 3 seconds, which this is a little bit below what I would like to see at his age. Usually from ages 4 to 5, we usually balance for 4 to 5 seconds. And then balancing on tiptoes, it was 2 seconds. I also want to note that he preferred to balance on the right foot compared to the left. And we'll go through the final scores in one of the following diagrams, but he did score poor in the stationary subsection. For locomotion, that is just the medical word for kind of movement, things like running and going on stairs. He was able to run 45 feet in under 6 seconds. He did achieve a partial flight phase. So when it goes from kind of a fast walk to a run where you're kind of in the air for part of a time. But he did kind of keep his arms at his sides and didn't bring his arms up like this. We weren't sure if it wasn't because he just didn't understand the task, but we did try it multiple times and he was not kind of showing that appropriate pattern. For the stairs, he did prefer to hold on to the handrails when going up the steps with an alternating pattern. So that's where one's foot is on each step. So you would have the left foot on the first step, and then you'd bring the right foot up to the second step and the left foot on the third step. So just going that over alternating pattern. And when he went down the steps, he did prefer to hold on to the handrails as well, but instead he used a step 2 pattern. So that's where you have one foot go down, the other foot meets it, and then it goes down again, and then another foot meets it again. So kind of having 2 feet on each step. We were also able to assess how he jumped forward, jumped up on one foot, and how high he could jump up. He was unable to jump on one foot and land it and kind of maintain that position without falling, but that is actually a little bit older of a skill than what he should be able to do. And then he did score below average also in this locomotion subsection. For object manipulation, we utilize a tennis ball and then a medium-sized red like kickball in our test. I try to find the best pictures in these cartoons here. One thing we do have to double check is that kids do not have a latex allergy when we use our tennis balls. So we always check that before the evaluation. But he was able to throw a tennis ball underhand and overhand at least 7 feet, and he was able to catch a medium-sized ball, so the red ball. But instead of catching it at his hands, he would kind of trap it towards his chest, which is a little bit immature for his age. And he did prefer to kick with the left leg in order to balance on that right leg during ball skills. And overall, he did score below average in the object manipulation subsection. Overall, all those 3 subsections come together to give him a score of gross motor performance. And with these, he also scored poor. So this is the picture I was kind of alluding to. You can kind of see the key kind of up to the right, and where one standard deviation below and above the mean is kind of that average range. He scored technically below average in all of these different subtests, where he had a little bit more strength in the object manipulation and locomotion section. So kind of the ones where he had to move around, where he was considered below average. And then in the yellow and red, which is the gross motor performance, he scored poor in. So that was a little bit less of a strength of his. So here are the tables with the exact values for these tests. One thing I would like to note is kind of again how Kelly mentioned, he was around 53 months at the evaluation, and his age equivalent for the stationary locomotion and manipulation was anywhere between 33 and 38 months of age. So kind of significantly lower than where he should be at. And he ranged from the 3rd percentile in gross motor performance, 5th percentile in stationary subtest, and 9th percentile between locomotion and object manipulation. I did, when discussing the scores with Mom, I did give a general caveat that his attention and may have kind of impacted his ability to complete some of these items, that it may have brought his scores down a little bit. And we did discuss that at the end of the session. We also completed the Little Developmental Coordination Questionnaire, the Little DCDQ. This assesses for the motor coordination difficulties in 3 and 4-year-old children. This is assessing for the condition DCD that we learned about from Patty Sharp and Aaron Iverson just a few weeks ago. We do not typically diagnose DCD until age 5, but this assessment kind of allows us to screen if they are at risk and if we need to kind of watch for it. But he actually scored very well. He scored a 74 out of 75, indicating that this was probably not DCD. Then finally, I did my lower extremity assessment. Overall, his range of motion, both of his ankles were within functional limits. I didn't feel any tightness or something we call clonus in physical therapy, where we are assessing for any neurologic deficit. I did not see any of that. He did show a little bit of decreased flexibility with his hamstring length. So the muscle behind his thigh may be a little bit tight. I think that that could possibly due to be coming from having a growth spurt, because the bone grows a little bit faster than the muscle. So it could be a little bit more tight, or from sometimes we get this from sitting too much. I don't think it's this latter option because he is so active, but if it became an issue and was limiting his function, we could give him some stretches. So going back to the steps, he used that alternating pattern when going up the steps and that step 2 pattern when going down. This pattern with needing to use a handrail is not typical for his age. Typically at around age 3, they're able to go up and down steps with that alternating pattern with a handrail, whereas age 4 and 5, they really should be able to do that alternating pattern without needing to use a handrail, both in going up and down. He also preferred to step down steps with his left leg, so he was controlling that descent on his right leg. And overall, his gait pattern was typical for his age. I did not see any toe walking. I did see some more of that heel toe pattern, and he had an appropriate gait speed, and all of that was great. His posture also looked great. There was no abnormalities in his spine that I found, or abnormalities in position of his ankles or pelvis, so that was also wonderful. For the observed behaviors, so I know we've kind of discussed a lot of the behaviors for Cooper in previous sessions, but overall, he did become easily distracted during the assessment and did have some difficulty with maintaining focus on a task. But with the caveat of that being said, our evaluation is 2 hours long, and the Peabody is a very long assessment. I think it would be exhausting for any 4-year-old, but that did occur a few times. A positive was that he was able to be redirected with his attention and being able to regulate his emotions when he got upset with some visual and verbal assistance. He specifically benefited from having a waiting chair during the assessment, having a visual schedule where we had a checklist as we completed items of the Peabody, and then a first then visual schedule that Kelly brought out. Basically, it says first work, then play, and helps them remember that they're working towards a goal. And also using visual aids on the ground for where to stand. We actually have these like colored circles that we used, and including positive choices. So having 2 different options that we actually want him to do, but allowing him to choose between the items that we would like him to complete. And then I thought it was really interesting that Risha brought this up, making sure we actually note on the strengths of the child and not just the impairments. So I originally started this slide as just an impairment slide, and then I decided that I wanted to do impairments and strengths because Cooper, I think, actually has a lot of strengths as well. So first, going off his strengths, I think that he has really good endurance and is very active. He's very motivated to move. He enjoys movement, which is something that's a little bit harder to teach. He is also very eager to please and is able to be redirected when distracted or upset. He really just wanted to have fun. He wanted your approval, and he wanted to do the right thing. And also, I think his family support is fabulous, and I think they will support him in whatever therapy needs he may need. For his impairments, I really do think he does have some decreased postural control and balance for his age, as noted in the Peabody and just my general observations. And he also may have a strength imbalance between the right and left sides. I tried to highlight this as we went through, but he really does prefer to use that right side with kind of getting up from standing. This is called half kneel. So when you are getting up from the ground, whichever foot is kind of placed in front is the foot and leg that is requiring more strength to get up off the ground. He really only transferred with his right foot forward. He liked going down the steps with his left leg and kicking with his left foot, which puts more stress on the right side. And he also preferred to balance on that right foot when balancing on one foot. And I did find that hamstring tightness, but it was fairly minimal, so I wasn't super concerned about it. So overall, PT recommendations is that we discussed that we're going to do every other week for 3 months to address these impairments in balance and strength. I did note that we could wait until the information sharing session to see what the family's priorities were, and then we could kind of go from there to see when we would want to do this PT episode of care. The interventions may include exercises to address balance, postural control, task-specific training, doing strengthening through functional activities like ones he would do every day, and stretching. And as always, we want to always provide parent and caregiver education and training in this. So that is my presentation. What questions do you guys have?
I have a question. Kim, I know that you said that, I know you don't usually think about diagnosing DCD until age 5, and that
Mhm.
the little DCD that the mom filled out was not consistent with that. And I'm not sure it would change your plan anyway, but I'm just curious, did that match up with your clinical impression?
The DCDQ.
Mhm.
I had thought about that since there was kind of a mismatch at the subjective that she didn't have any concerns with his motor skills. And then when I was, especially with the stairs, that he was really kind of showing delays for his age, that there may be less validity to the parent self-report measure, which is the little DCDQ. I would say that we would want to continue to follow him and then note if the coordination really becomes a main concern, that it's affecting his daily life. And then based on that, I would say then we would want to do more of a coordination assessment like the BOT or the MABC, which would then assist us in gaining a DCD diagnosis and see if that was actually causing his impairments. At this time, I felt like he was fairly coordinated with throwing the ball, but I think more of his issue is more of those stationary activities where he had a little bit lower postural control and trunk control. But I think it would be helpful to keep in the back of our minds because it is a parent report outcome measure. So we have to kind of go through it with that caveat, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Does anyone else have any more questions for Kim?
For the recommended therapy for PT and OT, is that something that they, like he could do at school, or do you think that that would be something that would happen? Okay.
So at least with PT with school, it kind of becomes a little bit muddy because school PT, you only qualify if you can't physically access your environment to be able to do school related tasks. So for instance, his stair use. He is perfectly safe with going up and down the stairs the way that he decides. And I think that if a school-based physical therapist looked at it, they would be like, well, I think he can physically access his environment and get to his classroom. He doesn't need school-based therapy. Whereas in outpatient PT, we can kind of work on more of those nuanced skills and those nuanced impairments, if that makes sense. Because the big thing with school PT is we don't want to take them out of the classroom unless we absolutely have to, that their main focus with going to school should be going to school, not getting school-based PT. So that is one, I guess, pro and con of school PT is sometimes we're a little bit more limited in what we can provide.
And then for OT, he would qualify for fine motor skills, but I would still want him an outpatient for picky eating and addressing those concerns.
So what they both were just saying is for school-based therapies, it has to be academic in nature. How do we support this child in educating and obtaining academics? So most of the time we do recommend outpatient still because school is so focused on such specific pieces that they're not looking like at the whole. I talk to families like they're not looking at your whole child. When you're in outpatient therapy, we're looking at the whole person in that environment, in all your environments. Also, I think for PT, my kids go to the same school as he does. He doesn't even leave. He lives in a ranch and he goes to school on the first floor. There are no steps in the building. The cafeteria, the playground, and the gym, nothing. He doesn't leave the first floor of that building at all. Not until he goes to 4th grade will he need to go down a flight of steps in his school building. It's all on the first floor. So school probably has never actually seen him walk up and down steps either. But so school-based therapies are always academic. How do we support education goals?
Yeah, if I can also give an example, I work in the school setting on Wednesdays, and like the types of kiddos I usually see there is, for instance, for the stairs, it's the ones who have a classroom on another floor, or they have to use the stairs to access their school environment and they are not safe. It's not that it doesn't look perfect or pretty, it's that they're not safe. And or for instance, if they're having issues getting up and out of the chair, or they can't get around their school classroom because their gait trainer or walker is inhibiting them in some way that they can't get around obstacles. That is more the instance where we see them in school for PT, if that helps, Angel. Sometimes I like having examples, so I wanted to provide that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. That's really helpful.
Well, thank you everyone for sharing. I think at this time, if you want to break out with your faculty member, we can do that unless Sally or Marta have any other updates.
We don't. We just have our case conference, right? And that is on need to schedule.
I don't know, but if we could, similar to last semester, work to get as much of that case conference form completed and pre-populated before we meet, so we're not spending all our time doing that, that would be fantastic. So remind me so has someone been doing that all along the way?
Yeah, I'm the note taker this semester, so I've
Okay.
just been taking all the notes on the case conference form, and so I will upload it either today or tomorrow with all the finalized notes from today, and you guys can have time until the next case conference to review and let me know what changes you want made before we meet again.
Awesome. Thank you, Amber.
Mhm.
So that's on April the 5th. So we got a couple weeks. All right. We can head to breakout rooms.